Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
I'm Scott.
I'm John.
And we're married. And this is the SweetTeaNoShade knitting podcast. No tea.
Sweet tea, yes.
Sweet shade knitting podcast. My name is Scott. Oh, wait, we already said that.
Yeah.
God, I'm so bad at this. We talk about knitting and we talk about movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
we occasionally digress from both.
I don't know. We are very on
topic.
On the target.
Actually, we edit out a lot of the digressions.
That's true.
If you think we digress, you have no idea.
We edit out a lot.
I'm sorry, you edit out a lot.
Thank you.
I'm just talent.
Right, you're just the talent. Yes. I am SweetTeaNoShade on Instagram and Ravelry.
I am John Asbury on Instagram, and ILoveYouIKnow on Ravelry. Not that
Perfect.
I post anything on Ravelry. My Ravelry account is kind of crickets. I've been bad about doing that, but we should both do it for the knit along.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're back.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 weeks ago that we did our
Yep.
last episode. Maybe a day after 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
but we're back. So we really enjoyed it last time. And
Shut up, Betty Ann.
I know. Just.
I know.
No, we don't need any comments from Betty Ann.
Right, about how we finally got on schedule.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And she didn't even bother us about doing one this weekend. She was too busy. She had to get her car fixed because she's afraid the airbag's going to blow up.
Okay. Oh, that's right. It got recalled or something like that?
Ours did too. But I have to take it in our car in anyway for some other work, so I'm going to get that done.
It's like
in
our
the next week or two.
It's like our whatchamacallit.
What's our whatchamacallit?
Upstairs. Our air fryer, which has also been recalled. And we've been like, well,
God, we have to cut the cord off and then send a picture of it in or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
So we digress.
We digress. John has a finished object and a work in progress to show. I have a work in progress to show. And then a purchase. Mm-hmm. And that's what we got for knitting content this week. And then we have our movies.
Yep. A couple of things. It is really cold in Minnesota right now. It is negative something something. I can't even talk about it.
So it's -6 with a wind chill of -24. And these are Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sunny.
It is sunny. And our house is nice and warm.
Yeah.
So that's good.
We only have a cold weather advisory.
Okay.
The people up north in northern Minnesota have a wind chill or an extreme cold weather warning since they have wind chills down to -45.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So let's look and see what it is in Alaska right now. In Fairbanks, Alaska, it's 18 degrees right now.
Yeah.
24 degrees warmer than it is here.
Right.
So, anywho, so do you want to start? I mean, I only have one thing, so you start with your finished object.
I'll start with finished object. So, I don't know. Was working this last time. This is the Nebula baby blanket. So, it's by Jake Kenyon, Venus and the Crab, and it is a baby blanket, and I am done. It is blocked, and it is getting ready to be sent to my first cousin once removed.
First cousin once removed and his wife.
Yes. No. No. Since
he's
my cousin once. He's my cousin.
He's your first cousin.
Yeah, my first cousin and his wife and their baby Callum, who is adorable. Who is about
Callum is your first cousin
once removed. Yeah. Who is, I think, 6 months old. So I think this will work. So this is in half right now. So it is a baby blanket.
That's like really big.
Yeah, it's really big. It's huge, but I really like it.
It smells good.
Yes, it was washed in Dreft, and then aggressively blocked to get it, because it's knit kind of like a big dishcloth where you start on this side with a I-cord cast on, and then you just keep increasing till you get to the end, and then you decrease to the other end, and you end with another I-cord bind off. So what that creates is a square.
Was this the weird I-cord bind off you were talking about?
Yes, yeah. So
it's just all the pastels instead of the black.
Yeah, I skipped
It doesn't matter.
I got off somehow in the 1 million rows of this, I got off, and so I should have ended either a row earlier or a row later, but I did the cast off in the pastel color, as opposed to thing. But it's got this really lovely, I love the border.
Yeah.
And I love also, because it's done with a sort of alternating stockinette and garter stitch. So you get like this kind of smooth stockinette, and the garter stitch gives it this bump. And so I think it'll be really fun for babies, I guess. I hear they like textures. I like the colors. So the colors are... This is Superwash Merino. So the black is Superwash Merino, and I think the color is Night Sky. And this is... Also Night Sky, sorry. Sorry. Obviously,
this is Lion Brand.
Lion Brand. Oh, it's a collaboration with Lion Brand yarn.
With Lion Brand,
and
right.
this is... So that's the dark. Okay.
Pastel print, and it's baby soft, and it is another Lion Brand, and it's acrylic and nylon. And both of them are machinable washer and dryable. Oh my god. Woo, let's say that.
And yeah, I really like the way the two yarns work together. I would recommend this blanket. Had I to do this all over again, I think these are both fingering weight knits yarns or sport maybe.
Yeah, I think we looked at it's 100 grams, 306 yards.
Right,
so it's heavier than fingering.
Right.
It's
but I would have done this in a thicker.
Yeah, heavier. Yeah.
What do you want? Anyway, our dog wants attention, so he put something in his mouth that he should not have in his mouth.
In the American numbering system for yarn, it's a 3. Yeah, sorry, it's a 3.
Yeah,
whatever that means.
So anyway, really happy to be done with this. I've been working this for several months, and I'm very happy to send it off to Callum and his parents.
Yay!
But yeah, I would recommend this pattern. It was really easy. It was really easy to follow when I was knitting it, if that makes sense, to read because of the two colors. And it was really good, kind of like knitting to do when you are doing something else. Popcorn knitting.
TV knitting.
Potato chip knitting. Rehearsal knitting as I was doing it. Show knitting. Backstage knitting. So yeah, very fun. We will put it in a package today and send it off, as we will the DVD of our last movie.
Oh yeah, that's right. As long as I haven't checked my Ravelry, but I asked the person who was first to send me their address in Ravelry, I believe. So. All right, I am now going to talk about my work in progress, which is the second square of the Mystery Knit-Along Blanket Knit-Along with Berroco yarns. John, Betty Ann, my mom, Betty Ann, and I are all doing it.
Along with 7,000 other people.
Yeah, I think it's 12,000 now.
Wow.
Or something like that. But, so I am on the second block. I showed the first block last time. This is my second color, obviously, which is Berroco. I said it before, but I'll say it again. It's Berroco Ruby. Color number 51181. And the second square has taken a lot longer than the first square.
Which makes sense because they're supposed to be increasingly more difficult
but it was
complicated.
It was quite the jump.
Yeah,
I will say. It's a chart. It's not a difficult chart. It's just that I'm getting to the point almost where I can't. I'm not memorizing it, but I'm getting to the point where I can
read it.
I can memorize at least the row that I'm on by glancing at the chart. You will see, perhaps, that I accidentally repeated 2 rows on this here.
Oh my god, you should start over. It looks terrible.
Throw it all away. It's because these are the middle of the diamonds that are created by the purl bumps, but you can see that these are wider. So I accidentally repeated 2 rows, a front row and a back row. But other than that, I mean, it's fun. It's been fun.
Yeah.
You can see this is what the front looks, the right side looks like, and then this is what the wrong side looks like. But you can see it's, what am I trying to say? It's nice. It's pretty and it's fun. But yeah, I'm ready to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, which will come in the beginning of February. So I'm trying to get close a little bit, take this cat hair off. But yeah.
How did that cat hair get on our knitted stuff? It's so weird.
It's very weird. But I have, so you're supposed to do 7 repeats. And I think it's hard to tell what a repeat is because it's not quite, it's like 1.5. Mm-hmm. So this would kind of be like 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5. I'm on the 6th repeat. So, and you're supposed to do 7 repeats. So, and it's similar in size to the other square. That'll all be solved by stitching the squares together and blocking, so I'm not too worried about it. But yeah. So I'm still loving this pattern, or this project, and it's, you know, I did some on the airplane, some on, while we're watching TV and all that kind of stuff. But really, this is the only thing I've worked on in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
I did start to, from the last episode, I talked about the fact that I'm knitting little miniature stockings for ornaments for next Christmas, just to get them out of the way. And I got so I'm on the heel, I've done the heel turn, and now I'm decreasing, doing the gusset decreases, and I got my DPNs all mixed up.
Yeah.
Or the stitches, because you have to rearrange the stitches onto the DPNs a couple times, and I did it wrong last time I was looking at it, so I just set it aside and only worked on this. And I think this is taking, like I said, it's taking me a long time because I've only been able to work on it here and there because we went to
Colorado last week.
Yeah, went to Colorado, and so we were really busy there, and so I've just been able to squeeze in knitting a little here and there, and what was my point? Oh, and so it's like when you pick the chart back up, you have to just, you know, remember where you are and all that. So, and although I've got my tape on it, it's not that it's...
But your tape's been, like, magically moving, right?
Yeah, but I think that's why I ended up moving.
Right.
I thought my tape had magically moved, but I think that's what caused me to repeat 2 rows.
Sure.
But, yeah, I've been marking my repeats up here and then using my tape to track where I'm at on the chart. So, yeah, so it's a good project.
Yep. And I will be doing this one also. My plan was to get some work done on my blanket, went to Colorado, but then we had a really early morning flight getting out there, and I was packing, and it's like, I don't have time to wind 2 balls.
Yeah.
And so what I did instead is I brought this project, which I've been working on. This is the Gresham Wrap by Michael Vloedman. I've been working on this for quite some time. But I basically took a little time to continue working on this one. So this is what I have so far. Basically what it is there are these series of colored stripes, panels, with different textures in them. And then...
lay it down and I'll start filming while you talk.
So... Okay. So you have these stripes, which are in different... It's made in blue sky fibers on wool stock, I believe. So these different colored stripes that all have different textures in them. So this one's like a diagonal. This is just straight stockinette. This one has like parallelograms. This one also has stripes, I think. No, anyway. Very, very cool. And the idea is...
Were these stripes charted? Or
yes.
were they... Okay.
No, they were just...
They're
just a pattern.
Okay.
So, and the nice thing about it is they're pretty easy patterns, but they look really cool.
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you do this first this section right here. You start off up here with this modified linen stitch. Do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stripes. And then you go back to the modified linen stitch, which creates this kind of cool flat pattern. The pattern says 58 inches is when, and then after 58 inches of this, I'll do these backwards and then this again.
Got it.
So it's going to be huge. The measurements of the pattern say that this part across should be 14 inches. It is a little bit more than that. But I'm excited for it. It's going to be really cozy and fun and just a nice wrap. And I think I'm going to keep it. I was going to give it as a gift, but I think I'm going to keep this for myself. Nice.
I mean, I kind of would love to have a sweater with these stripes across it, you know?
Well, oh yeah, like a little chest band. I think I've done a couple of things with Blue Sky Fibers. I've done a hat with them, with their stuff. They do really great kits. And I just love, there's something about their colors that I really, really like. Yeah. So anyway, and the nice thing about this is I'm to the point, so this is this stitch is done with a 4-row repeat. And I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty much close to just knitting it without looking at the pattern at all.
Oh, okay.
So that's nice.
It's a how many row repeat?
4-row repeat.
Okay.
That has increases and decreases and different, obviously there's you're not just doing stockinette or garter. So you do do a little bit of thinking, but once you're getting the rhythm of it, it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
So there's been my my TV knitting project for a bit. So yeah, I'm really happy with this. I'm glad I picked it back up because it's going to very easy languished for another couple of years.
Yeah.
But once I got back into this, I'm like, oh, this is super easy. And, when I sit down, I do one of the repeats and then I call that a day.
Because this pattern was released along with kits on the Knit the River cruise that Darn Knit Anyway in Stillwater, Minnesota does.
Yeah.
And then it sold out, though.
It sold out there, and then we went back to Darn Knit Anyway, and they had
more kits.
Yeah. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
And they have one that is similar colors, but where the base color is white.
Or cream. Is it cream? I think it's more of a light,
I just
light cream.
I just like this is, I forget what it's called. This color is Highland Fleece. Yeah. So this is kind of fun. I can give you the colors for the name. So the bottom one is Highland Fleece.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
This one is Spring Ice. This one is Spun Gold. This one is Loon Lake. This one is Midnight.
Midnight Sea.
Oh, Midnight Sea. This one is Ember Glow. This one is Rusted Roof, which I think this is a great color. And this one's Red Rock.
Cool.
So just great colors.
And it is their wool stock, which is worsted, 100% fine Highland wool.
Yeah.
So
this is great. And it's just a very striking. It's gonna end up being a very striking piece.
And perfect for days like today.
No shooey. So
cool.
Fantastic.
All right. And then like I said, I don't have anything that I worked on since our last episode. However, we went to, we were going to, okay, here's the deal. I make a lot of iced tea. And I like to make it in gallon pitchers because I can go through a lot of iced tea. And I had a Pampered Chef pitcher. Mm-hmm. That either I had gotten or my mom had gotten me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's old.
Right.
But I poured the boiling water from the tea directly into that pitcher and it cracked.
Yeah.
Rather than putting cold water in it and then adding it to the cold water. And so I need a new gallon pitcher. That should be easy to find, right? You just go down to the store and get a gallon pitcher. Go to Target, right?
Right.
Target doesn't have gallon pitchers. So we're like, well, let's go to, there's this area in Minneapolis, or actually technically it's in a suburb called Edina, called 50th in France, where they have Shishi Fufu stores, including, there used to be a Sur La Table store there.
Right.
And now it's a Cooks on Crocus Hill was those are just local, aren't they?
I think so.
So now it's Cooks on something else.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
And they're just really high-end cooking stores. I don't know what you call that. Kitchen supply stores or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we're like, oh, let's go get a nice glass gallon pitcher or something. No gallon pitchers. So I went to Target. What's the point of the story? Oh, so we stopped at Harriet and Alice because it's right there too in 50th and France, and we don't need any yarn, obviously. Now that wouldn't normally stop us, but we had just bought a bunch of yarn for this blanket project, so we weren't having the itch necessarily. Mm-hmm. However, we were walking around and I saw this, which is ARNE CARLOS. New Nordic Men's Collection by ARNE CARLOS. 12 designs using felted tweed, kid silk haze, and alpaca soft DK. Which must be
Rowan, yeah.
Yeah, from Rowan. It's not a new book. It's okay. So it's from 2019 actually.
Right.
So I want to show a couple of the pictures that I was really taken with. So this cardigan looks amazing to me. Mm-hmm. Although I don't wear a lot of cardigans, but I would maybe if I made it. This one, I don't know that I would do it, but it's kind of a fun deconstructed, like Norwegian rose or whatever that design element is that they. This is one I've never done a
yoke
sweater like this. I would love to do a yoke sweater pattern like this. I've got plenty of patterns, and this is another where it's kind of a deconstructed. It's like the Nordic or Norwegian rose again, but it's like melting.
Yeah.
Which again, I don't know that I would do that sweater necessarily.
Oh, I like that one a lot.
But then also, this one. This is it's like the giant. Norwegian rose. Right. So so there's lots of things in here that we could do. They have a hat.
We got some mittens.
Yeah, there's it in the back.
Maybe the front.
I thought I looked at all the pictures. Anyway. I didn't show this page. So this is a bunch of the they did this book very much like a fashion collection, a design collection where you have something that ties all the patterns together, and it's obviously that. And I'm calling it a Norwegian rose. I don't know if that's technically what it's called. I think it is considered a rose, that design. But I don't know if it's Norwegian or Scandinavian in general or whatever. But this sweater's got tons of them, and then you've got these mittens that he's wearing. So I'm, I needed another book like I need a hole in the head, but that's okay.
Someday we will make them all.
Yes. All right. So, for next episode, I will have finished this block. Mm-hmm. Will it be February? Hang on.
Yes, it will be.
Yes.
But we'll be in Puerto Vallarta.
Oh, yeah. 2 weeks from now, we'll be in Puerto Vallarta.
But we'll
be
Mexico. We'll bring knits there.
Yeah, but so my point was we will have the pattern for the next block of the blanket. Right. Oh my goodness. I will probably have gotten back on the bandwagon with my knit ornaments, and I will have done a couple of those. But also, I think February is only one block.
No. Harris. No.
What's he doing?
He was reaching into my yarn bag to get something that he knows he doesn't want.
He's being an innocent boy.
Do you want a pig ear?
Oh, let's give him a pig ear. Oh my god. All right, so February only has one square.
Right.
So I wonder if that will give... Yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
we'll find out.
It's a mystery and along. We just don't know.
Yes. Cool. So that's that. And that is the end of our knitting content for this episode. We are now transitioning to our movie reviews.
Yes.
And also, we want to give a shout out to Rose. a.k.a. Salt or Pepper, I can't remember which. We hung out with Matt and Jeffrey yesterday evening, and he mentioned that you're still watching, so hi to Rose.
Right.
Okay, so we start with the best movie and then do the worst movie. So I'm going to start. This was 1987, the Academy Awards that were presented in 1988.
Yep.
I did The Emperor's New Clothes. The Emperor's New Groove. Now, I did Best Picture of 1988, which was The Last Emperor. Oh my God, sorry. Okay, so I am going to walk through a quick plot synopsis because there are people that watch this part of our YouTube show that don't watch the movies.
Right.
And also, I think if you're someone who's watched the movie a long time ago, I just think the conversation is more interesting if we start off with a plot summary. So, the movie starts in 1950, where Puyi, the former emperor of China, has been a prisoner of the Red Army since his capture during the Soviet invasion of Manchuria. He has been kept at Fushun prison. When he first gets there, he attempts suicide, but then he's rescued because they want to hold him accountable through a trial. 42 years earlier, in 1908, when he was a toddler, he was summoned to the Forbidden City by Dowager Empress Cixi, and so the little boy was told that Cixi the Empress is telling him that he's going to be the next emperor. Then they have the coronation, but Puyi, of course, as toddler, is terrified of everything that's around him, and he wants to go home. And he's told, no, sorry, you can't go home. And so he has, at the time, the Forbidden City was populated by eunuchs and maids, but the plot summary points out that really his only friend is his wet nurse Armo, who was brought with him when he came to the palace, and he was separated from his mother, right? Because she didn't come with, right? Okay. So then he grows up, as he's growing up, he's not allowed to leave the Forbidden City, or actually, he's not allowed to leave the palace. Then his brother comes, Puja, and tells him, well, guess what? You're no longer an emperor because China has become a republic. And so this is a part that I forgot to look up when, as far as history, but so there must have been some kind of overthrow of the emperor.
Yeah.
And was it a military thing, or
I guess,
do you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the fun thing about this movie is it covers a period of history and an era of history that I know next to nothing about. So that was fun. I mean, learning about
Which
it.
Which is saying something.
Yeah.
Because you know a lot.
Yeah.
About that stuff. So, about history. So, anyway, it's become a republic, but it's not this is not when it becomes a communist country.
Right.
So, I think which was the part that confused me.
And I think what happened is the guy, I don't know if it's Chiang Kai-shek. I don't know who it is, so I'm sorry. But the person who became in charge after that first overthrow was interested in setting himself up as the emperor, and so that's why he sort of kept the trappings of the imperial court there with the kid, so at some point he could take it over.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is why he's still emperor, but not with any power.
Right. Okay. So Puja, his brother, tells him this because he doesn't know what's going on outside, and they kick his wet nurse out. Then years pass, and it's now 1919, so it's 11 years later. So if he's 44 in 1950, I'm trying to figure out how old he is. 1919, Puyi is 13, and Reginald Johnston, played by Peter O'Toole, is appointed as his tutor so that he can get a Western-style education. And then he, at this point, he's becoming a teenager, and he's like, I want to get the hell out of here, out of the Forbidden City. And Johnston, who begins to suspect or blatantly sees that they're taking advantage of the emperor and wasting his money and all of that, convinces... It says Johnston, wary of the courtier's expensive lifestyle, convinces Puyi that the best way of achieving this, meaning achieving leaving the city, is through marriage. I don't see how those two are connected, but whatever. So then he marries Wanrong, who's his primary wife, and then Wen Chao, who is his
secondary consort.
Right. So then he decides to reform everything, kicks out the eunuchs, but then in 1924, when he's 18, he is kicked out of the palace, or 17, I think. He's kicked out of the palace and exiled to Tianjin because there's a Beijing coup.
Right.
And then he basically becomes a playboy and an Anglophile, becomes obsessed with, British culture, and then ends up... while he's there, decides to side with the Japanese because the Japanese are going to set up a puppet state in Manchuria, which they call Manchukuo.
Yeah. And Manchuria is where his family is originally from.
Right, that's true. Right.
There's the whole thing because that last dynasty was Manchurian and not Han Chinese. So there was also a lot of resentment among the Han and the other ethnic groups in China about being the emperors being Manchurian. They're sort of foreigners too.
Right. So then, so his secondary consort divorces him because she doesn't like being second all the time. Wanrong remains and then ends up becoming addicted to opium. And then in 1934, so 10 years later, he's crowned emperor of Manchukuo by the Japanese, although he's just a figurehead, and he thinks he's not going to be a figurehead, but he ends up being a figurehead. So then his wife, he goes to Tokyo for a while. While he's gone, his wife gets pregnant with the driver of their car so that he can have an heir. But then when the baby's born, the Japanese murder the baby and say that it was stillborn. So then the Wanrong, his wife, is taken to a clinic, and they don't say what really happens to her there, but she really declines.
Nothing good.
Nothing good, and I think she does nothing but smoke opium all day. So then, so this is during World War II, and when the Japanese surrender to the Americans at the end of World War II, he then decides that he's going to surrender to the Americans because it'll be better for him, and he wants to live in the United States anyway.
Right.
But as he's trying to get out of China, he's captured by the Soviets and handed over to the Chinese and the Red Army. And that's now that we're now connected back up to the original storyline at the beginning where he was in the prison. He then went through a communist re-education program for political prisoners, and he was kind of coerced into renouncing his collaboration with the Japanese. And then he has this conflict with Jin Yuan, who is the prison governor. And I bring him up specifically because he's there's some interesting stuff about him later. Later in some trivia that I get to.
Okay.
So then they show a film showing what the wartime atrocities were that were done to the Chinese by the Japanese, and Puyi, I think at that point, or it says here, and I think so too, he realizes that he was supporting these people that were doing these horrible things.
And that he was responsible. Yeah. Because they were done in his name. Right.
Even though he wasn't necessarily aware that they were happening, he was still the emperor. Right. And he supported the Japanese. Then he was released. So after he has a true confession of it, he's released in 1959. So he was in the prison for 9 years, or 10 years. So then in 1967, so this is now 8 years later, he's just a gardener and lives as a peasant proletarian proletariat in, I assume, Beijing. And this is when Mao Zedong comes to power, and there's the Cultural Revolution. And then as he's on his way home from work, he sees this Red Guard parade celebrating the rejection of landlordism by the communists. And he sees Jin Yuan, who is the governor of the prisoner, and he's being punished. He's been marched through the parade as an anti-revolutionary and forced to wear a dunce cap and a sandwich board wearing a bunch of stuff written on it. And that upsets him because he's like, this guy was ultimately good to me, even though he was the head of the prison.
Right.
He ended up like being on good terms with him. So then Puyi later, however many years later, then goes to visit the Forbidden City where he lived and grew up as emperor. It's now a museum where he meets this little boy, and who's a guard for the Forbidden City. And so the boy tells him, because Puyi was going to like look at the throne that he used to sit on, and the little boy's like, you can't go up there. And he's like, well, I was the emperor. I used to live here. And so he's like, the little boy's like, prove it. So Puyi goes up to the throne and finds behind the throne, tucked behind this little container where he kept a cricket for good luck, gives it to the little boy to prove to him, that he knew where that was, and thus he obviously was the emperor, or at least lived there at one point. And the little boy opens the container, and the cricket is in there alive from 60 years ago.
Right.
So it kind of gives this mystical, fun ending to the movie. And so then the little boy turns around to talk to him, and and Puyi is gone. And then it pans back, and 10 years have passed, and they're giving a tour through the museum with some American tourists, and the tourist makes a comment that the
last emperor
had died in 1967. So sorry for the long plot summary, but I think it's important.
It's a long movie with a lot going on.
It's a long movie, yeah. So the cast. Wait a second. Do I have this in the right order? Sorry, give me just a second here. Oh no, I forgot. It's on both pages. Okay. So, sorry. The tour guide was in 1987, so it was 20 years later.
Right.
Okay, so it was so this was interesting to me. It was released in the United States on April 15th of 1988, according to IMDb, which is weird to me because
maybe it's the wide release.
Yeah, I don't know. That was the release date.
Huh.
So anyway, maybe it was a typo. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and the director was Bernardo Bertolucci. Do you know of Bernardo Bertolucci?
Sort of vaguely.
Okay, I've never heard of him. He did a lot of Italian movies, and then I think this was his first. I don't know if it was his first English language film. But like right before the movie before this that he directed was Farewell to Enrico Berlinguer, and before that was Tragedy of a Ridiculous Man. These are translations from the Italian. And then right after this, he did The Sheltering Sky, which was about an American couple traveling abroad to revitalize their relationship. But after the trip drags on, their attempt at recovering what they once had seems futile, and it was Deborah Winger and John Malkovich.
Yep.
And The Last Emperor, The Sheltering Sky, and I didn't write it down. There's a third movie that they consider Bertolucci's Oriental trilogy.
Gotcha.
The cast. So the guy who plays the adult Puyi is John Lone. I didn't recognize any of the other stuff he'd done. Joan Chen was his primary wife. Wan Rong, I think, was her name.
Right, and I knew her from Twin Peaks.
Oh, that's where she's from. Oh, I didn't see that when I was looking her up. Peter O'Toole played the tutor. And then there are other actors that I just didn't know. Like one of them was but I recognize Victor Wong. I feel like he's someone that had a huge long career.
He was the prison camp guy?
No, he was the he was this guy.
Oh yeah.
So one fun trivia bit is that Victor Wong, who played it wasn't his was it his tutor before Peter O'Toole? I think that's what he was.
Right.
So Victor Wong, Lisa Liu, who played, she was in I don't know what her role was, and Vivian Wu, who played another character. I'm sorry, I can't tell.
Right.
Those three people that were in this movie were then together again in the Joy Luck Club.
Okay.
So that was kind of cool. According to IMDb, it made about $44 million on a £23 million budget. So I don't know how that translates.
Right.
But yeah. So other nominees for Best Picture that year were Broadcast News.
Okay.
Which was directed by James Brooks, who was the director for the
Terms of Endearment.
Yeah, that we did last episode. Yep. Fatal Attraction.
Okay.
Hope and Glory.
Okay.
And Moonstruck.
Okay.
But some of the other movies, I didn't write them all down, but some of the other movies that came out this year were like The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
Not that they should have deserved Best Picture, but like
right.
there were a ton of good movies that came out this year. 1987. So it was nominated for and won 9 awards.
Okay.
So it got Best Picture, Best Screenplay Adapted from Another Medium, rather than Screenplay Written for the Screen.
Right. Because it's based on Puyi's autobiography.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was in my trivia coming up. But yes, it was based on Puyi's actual autobiography.
And it's interesting because I was reading a little bit about that. So it's published in the 60s when he was still alive, and in the late 2000s there was a revised version that has like an extra 170,000 words that were cut from the original one.
Oh my gosh.
By, I assume, censors. So I'm not sure I'm going to sit down and read it anytime soon, but it'd be interesting to know like what the difference between the two editions are.
Yeah. So it won Best Picture, Best Screenplay Adapted from Another Medium, Best Score, which David Byrne had a big part in, who was the lead singer for the Talking Heads. Art Direction, Cinematography, Costumes, Film Editing, and then I could not find the other two on the Wikipedia page.
Might have been like technical awards.
Yeah.
Like the ones that get announced but not listed or something.
Yeah, it must have been. They weren't acting awards.
No, I don't think, was it nominated for any acting awards? I don't think
wasn't.
So. Yeah.
So it matched 1958's Gigi. For what?
Oh, Gigi's just a very funny movie.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it.
Like, not haha funny, but you're like, it's got the Thank Heaven for Little Girls song. You're like, it's a very interesting movie to watch now. Yeah,
didn't age well, right?
Yeah.
So it matched that movie's accomplishment of winning all the categories in which it was nominated.
Okay.
Which in both cases did not include acting categories. And then that record, which were both 9. They both were nominated for 9, won 9, but none of them were acting. And then that record was broken in 2003, and it's the only time it's been broken, by The Lord of the Rings Return of the King, which won in 11 categories, which didn't include any acting nominations.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, interesting trivia. Now, these are coming from IMDb, so who knows if they're 100% true. Some of them are more believable than others.
Right.
During the filming of the coronation scene, which was... I think that I don't even know how many extras. I mean, there's like thousands of extras. In the coronation scene, the Forbidden City, Queen Elizabeth II was there for a state visit, and the government of China gave precedent to the movie, and so Queen Elizabeth II didn't get to go to the Forbidden City.
Yeah, to be fair, I imagine China enjoyed that.
Yeah.
They don't love the English there.
What was interesting is that this movie, it sounds like the Chinese government were given 2 screenplays to review. They picked this one, and they basically gave them free rein for the content and for working inside the Forbidden City. which was the first time that had ever happened.
Right.
With a Western whatever. It says most of the interior and exterior scenes of Puyi's mansion when he was the puppet emperor of the Japanese were filmed in the Imperial Palace at Changchun, where the actual Puyi lived from 1934 to 1945. So the mansion is now a museum, and it was actually
where he lived in.
That mansion is actually where he was. The real Puyi was living. I already talked about the fact that it was the first feature film granted permission by the Chinese government to be filmed there in the Forbidden City. There was a documentary that had been done in 1973. That was the first time any filming was allowed in the Forbidden City, but this was a feature film. Puyi's brother, younger brother, Puchie, or I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, and Lee Wenda, who was an assistant on... Lee Wenda was an assistant on the autobiography, and Puchie was the governor's actual those actual people were advisors on the film.
Okay.
And then, I thought this one was interesting. The hairdresser, an Italian hairdresser who was brought in, imported 2,200 pounds of human hair to make the wigs.
I could see that.
And the coronation scenes, and they spent 10 days training 50 Chinese assistants to do the wigs and everything for the 2,000 extras for the coronation scene. And they said that there was a scene with a bunch of guards, the governor's guards, the one, and where they have just the hair on the back, and all of the men that did that really shaved their heads and did all of that, and they got paid an extra $3.50 for doing that. And then a couple more trivia items. One is that it was the first PG-13 rated film to win win Best Picture, and that's probably because that was early on when PG-13 existed as a rating. And then this was my favorite bit of trivia. So Wan Jin, the governor of the prison, who was responsible for Puyi's rehabilitation and release from the real Yuan Jin is the one who, in the scene where he's released from prison, he calls out his name. They say, "Prisoner Puchie." It was the voice was the real Yuan Jin, but then they use the actor to shake his hand.
Right.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. The real Yuan Jin is the one who says the name. Okay. But the actor's the one that says, because I think they show the actor saying the words of, you're calling him forward. And then one of the people that he shakes hands with is the real Yuan Jin.
Gotcha.
Which I thought was pretty cool. All right, the rest of it is conversation questions. So, who do we think gave the best performance?
Joan Chen.
The wife?
The first wife.
The first wife?
She was really good.
She was amazing, yeah. One more trivia thing I forgot to write it down, is that the Cixi, the Empress Dowager, in the autobiography, the Puyi wrote that when he first saw her, he screamed in terror because she was so terrifying. Yeah. And he called her the ugly face behind the curtain. And so the Empress Dowager was upset by that, so she gave him candy, and that made him scream louder because she was so terrifying. So she's pretty terrifying in the movie.
Well, and I read a biography of her at one point, because she's she's known as the Dragon Lady. I mean, there's a pejorative name given to her, and there's a lot of propaganda written about her because she was, in charge of the Chinese monarchy for 20 years behind the scenes and stuff like that. And so, she was this really powerful woman who had a very mixed reputation while she reigned. I wish I remembered anything from that biography. I read it 30 years ago.
Yeah, so I forgot about that. But yeah, the performances were all very convincing. It felt like a behind the scenes true story. I think some of the acting was odd. And I think part of that was because of just cultural differences of like the actor. Because like they said in the scene where they're doing that parade, and all the young people have the red books, and it's about the defeat of landlordism. Right. The director really struggled because those kids didn't embody the right level of anger and intensity because they didn't know about the Cultural Revolution and didn't understand the Cultural Revolution. But they're acting out that. Right. You know.
Right. So it seems jolly and not fierce.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. But
I always thought it was interesting that, you know, so it's a English language film, and I assume that the actors or the characters are speaking Chinese, but we're hearing them speaking English because it's for English audiences. But then there'd be other parts that were in Chinese.
Yeah. Or, you mean in real life they were speaking Chinese?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So that was interesting. Or I guess Mandarin or...
Oh, yeah, Mandarin or... It would be Mandarin. Okay. I read that because Beijing isn't Mandarin and Peking is Cantonese.
Okay.
And so they talked about the fact that there's at one point there's a car, what do they call those? Like there's a card.
Yeah.
Like where it flashes text up on the screen. And it says Peking 1967. And that's the Cantonese pronunciation, but Beijing is the Mandarin pronunciation, and they would have been speaking Mandarin.
Okay.
According to what I read.
Right.
I don't know any of this to be true, but... and then, the other thing about the acting that seemed... There were some scenes where, like, there were some characters that were voiced...
Clearly overdubbed, yeah.
Overdubbed, yeah. But there were several people that were considered... Not several, but there were other actors that were considered for the role of Puyi, but they selected that actor, John Long, I think his name is, because his English was so good.
Gotcha.
What else? Was there any knitting or fiber content?
I mean, there were some fabulous silks.
No, there was knitting, remember? We talked about that. Or was that an Ishtar?
That's an Ishtar.
Oh, we just watched these movies back to back this weekend, so I'm good. That's right, it was an Ishtar. Never mind, we'll get to that in a minute. And then personal history with the film. I had watched this when it was on, like, my family was an early adopter of cable, and so Betty Ann got us cable early on, and back in the day, for those of you that don't know or don't remember, like HBO, Showtime, all of these cable movie channels would show like 5 movies in a month, and they would just play them over and over and over and over and over again, and so a lot of kids people my age when they were kids have strong memories of certain movies that were played over and over and over again. And this, for me, was one of them. Like, I watched this movie probably 10 times when I was growing up because it was fascinating to me, and it was easily accessible because of cable. So, and it was interesting because I probably haven't seen it in 25 years, and there were certain scenes that really impressed upon me. And it was interesting to go back and see those scenes again as an adult and actually understanding the kind of government or the political stuff that was going on, because I certainly didn't understand that when I was a kid. But like, yeah. So, what about you?
I had never seen it. Yeah. When it came out, I didn't see it. It's like funny because we did so a lot of the movies of this time, like the late 80s, whatever. I saw on VHS because we got a VCR at some point.
Oh, okay.
And I think my parents were like, yeah, we're not gonna. This is too long.
Well, and it was interesting because I think you had stepped out of the room, but when we were visiting your mom this past week, we were talking about the fact that we were going to watch this movie, and she's like, "Oh, I remember when the awards came out, and like that movie won. It's so boring."
Right.
And I was like, well, I really liked it.
Well, and it's like it's often like when you talk about Academy Awards, it's kind of one of those movies you always hear about, like the really good movie that won the Academy Award that had no impact on the zeitgeist or the culture. So, because the movies that were nominated that year. I think Fatal Attraction was the big cultural movie of the year that everyone knew about. And Last Emperor is kind of the really well-made, beautiful, historical epic that wins the Academy Award that no one talks about ever again.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's like when you talk about like the history of the Oscars, it's considered one of those, like, it's a really good movie. Everyone who saw it recognizes it's a good movie. But after you see it, like, it doesn't leave the impression beyond.
Well, and it didn't just win Best Picture.
Right.
It won 9 awards. Mm-hmm. There was only one other movie that year that won multiple awards.
Right.
And I can't remember which one it was, but it only won 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like they got 9. The next movie that got the most was 3, and then everybody else, every other thing got that one got 1.
Because Moonstruck won Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress.
That must have been Moonstruck. Must have been the one that won 3. I don't think I included it in my screenshots here.
Yeah,
no, I didn't.
That's all right. But like I've seen Moonstruck several times, and I would watch Moonstruck again. I don't know if I'll watch Last Emperor ever again.
Yeah, I don't know if I will either. It's like the 11th time I've watched it.
Yeah. So I mean, you've probably had your fill.
Yeah.
Anything else we should talk about?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Cool. So now, worst movie.
The worst movie. So the worst movie 1987. So we go by the worst movie as determined by the Razzies. This movie, which we're watching, Ishtar, did not win Worst Picture. It did win Worst Director and worst original screenplay. Yay.
I love that it got Worst Original Screenplay. That's like, not only was your movie bad, your idea was bad.
Yeah. And then the movie that did win was Leonard Part 6, which is this like weird action sci-fi comedy sponsored by Coca-Cola and starring Bill Cosby, and just for a lot of reasons we did not want to watch that. And I think arguably Ishtar is the most famous bad movie from that year.
Oh, okay.
So Ishtar is like, when you think about like, if The Last Emperor is the example of the beautiful movie that wins the Academy Award everyone thinks about, Ishtar is like this movie cost so much and was like, I think it was the biggest flop of its time.
Oh.
And it's like this sort of ego-driven vanity project that people always, when you're talking about movie history, Ishtar is like always like the worst movie ever, or the worst folly of a movie ever.
Yeah.
Because it was so expensive, it took so long to make, and it was all A-list talent. And then when it came out, it got terrible press and was made fun of. So it's known as a famous flop.
Okay. I have some things I want to say and ask, but I'm going to save it for when we talk about our personal...
Yeah. So Ishtar came out in 1987. It was released on May 15th, 1987.
The day before my 10th birthday.
Oh my god. It was meant to be a Christmas release in 86.
Okay.
But because the production was so troubled and the editing process was so contentious, like apparently the director, Lane May, and Warren Beatty like fought a lot in the editing room. And at one point, she just kept editing it, trying to make it work, and the studio basically had to sue her to get the print to release.
Oh my god.
So it was a very contentious filming editing process. So yeah, released in May of 1987. The plot is basically, it's kind of meant to be a screwball comedy. Two Americans go to a foreign country, get involved in an international incident, and shenanigans ensue. So Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty are these two middle-aged men, I think they're in their 40s, who abandon their regular lives to become songwriters. And one of the running jokes in it is they're really bad songwriters. Like, they will write these songs and they're just bad, and they're meant to be hysterically funny bad. And apparently the guy who wrote them, Elaine May, and one of her, I forget the guy's name, wrote the songs, and they like
Peter Johnson,
or
Peter Murray, or
something
Peter,
like that. Yeah. And they had the best time writing those songs, and like everyone
did not translate.
So these two inept songwriters get sent to do a gig in Morocco by their agent, who might also be a leftist. We're not sure. And they stumble upon this great conspiracy. There is a map that's kind of MacGuffin that everyone's looking for, and they have somehow, and they get involved with the CIA, and there's shenanigans and
helicopters
and a blind camel, and it reminded me a lot. Do you remember the movie Spies Like Us? Came out the same.
I must have seen it.
It's Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase, and they're like CIA. They're like these people.
I get that mixed up with Stripes.
Yeah,
which I know are not. Yes,
right, but it's the same sort of thing, like fish out of water. Sort of innocent American doofuses get wrapped up in something bigger than themselves and end up saving the day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the plot. I mean, there's a whole thing where there's this map that's going to support the revolution in this little country called Ishtar, and the map is in the lining of a jacket that Isabel Adjani's character gives to Dustin Hoffman in the airport, and blah blah. Yeah. It's a lot of running around the desert, and
well, I mean, I don't know if anybody ever sat down and counted the minutes, but the number of minutes spent on Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty making up songs, and singing these made up songs. I mean, it felt like it was at least a third of the movie time was spent. I mean, those scenes, I'm talking about editing, those scenes went on way too long. They weren't funny. They just kept going on.
Well, I think it's one of those things like, you're supposed to, I think the premise of this movie only works. This movie only works if you think watching Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman be on screen is like the best thing ever. Like, if you're like, oh my god, I love these guys, and they're great in their roles, and watching them be on screen together is just like the best thing. Like, I think that the film would work that. I would disagree that is how the film actually works. Like, you watch it and you're like, well, they're fine, but it's like there's.
Hey, Iris, don't do that, please.
The movie is shot and directed as if like they're the best thing ever to happen, and that of course everyone is immediately like, oh my god, it's Warren Beatty, and he's this southern doofus who can't get women. So like, yeah, I think the idea is like, Warren Beatty, Dustin Hoffman, it's gonna be awesome, and it's not.
No.
So yeah, shenanigans ensue. There's fight scenes that get lost in the desert. And it was written and directed by Elaine May, who is kind of this legendary figure in American comedy. So she was Elaine and Nichols. She was like a comedy partner with him in the 50s and 60s, and they were one of the first big improv groups that made it big. And like one of their.
Has she ever been an actress?
Yeah, she also acts and stuff too.
Okay.
So she's this actress, director, writer, comedy legend. So she's one of those people like.
Would I know her from anything?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like, but she's one of those people when you hear about like as you read about her career, it's like.
I've heard the name before.
Yeah, so like she was the first female director with a movie deal since Ida Lupino in the 20s. So like,
oh, wow. So
for her to be directing films is a big deal. So she had 3 movies before this: A New Leaf, The Heartbreak Kid, and the gangster film Mickey and Nicky, which are all really well regarded films. And then she directed this one, Ishtar, and she didn't direct anything afterwards. Partially because like this was no movies afterwards because of the fallout from this. But like she's one of those people you read about her and like she's clearly a genius, right? Like everyone's like, this woman is awesome. So she wrote the screenplay for The Birdcage.
Oh.
Primary Colors, Heaven Can Wait. She rewrote the scripts for Tootsie.
So when it says that she wrote the screenplay for The Birdcage, she took La Cage aux Folles and then wrote the screenplay off of that.
Exactly. Okay. And wrote Heaven Can Wait, which is Warren Beatty's big films. She also was the scriptwriter rewriter for Reds and Tootsie.
I don't know Reds.
It's Warren Beatty's like 83 I think it's 83 Best Picture movie. He won the Best Picture for that.
Best Picture or Best Actor?
Both. I think Best Picture.
Okay. He wouldn't have won that. He was in the movie that was...
No, he directed it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what he won for Reds, but she is really credited with both Reds and Tootsie, like saving those movies through uncredited rewrites.
Got it.
So yeah, she's a big deal. In 2002, she got the Academy Awards gave her an honorary Oscar.
2022.
She also won a Tony for Best Actress after this for being in the Waverly Gallery. So she's at least she might be an EGOT, but she's definitely a Grammy, Oscar, Tony winner.
Wow.
And for someone who was made her mark in the 50s as a female comedian, director, writer, like it's one of those things like what obviously a lot of sexism played. She made a career despite the fact it was really hard for women to make creative careers in Hollywood, except as anyway. So she's a legend, right?
Yeah.
So that's who directed it. I'm sorry, but that's actually a big deal about it.
Yeah.
So Warren Beatty starred in it, obviously. And he was also one of the producers. And so he and Elaine May did not get along during the making of the movie, and it was a problem because he was the main producer and she was the director. And at one point, he wanted to fire her, but he was like, I can't fire her because I have such a reputation as a feminist ally. So a lot of the fights were over the fact that Warren Beatty his girlfriend was Isabella Gianni at the time.
Okay.
The woman, the
woman,
leftist rebel.
Yeah.
So she was his girlfriend.
Oh my God.
And he was mad because he felt there's a lot of fights about like her role wasn't developed enough.
I thought her role was better than his role.
Yeah. But like in terms of
she did a much better job acting that role than he did.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Girl.
And then Carol Kane has a minor part in it too. The budget was $55 million.
What?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that makes sense because they had the helicopters and the guns and the...
Well, so like it was really the shoot in Morocco was really expensive. And again, stretched out, like, I think it was filmed over like 6 or 7 months. And then they did the filming in New York afterwards. And like, there were some things where like at one point, they didn't like the dunes. And so they bulldozed the dunes. And that was like $8,000.
Oh my God.
And so there was just there's a lot of adding for that. And then like everything just took longer than it should have. Elaine Mays is known for being a perfectionist in her work, and so there were a lot of like shooting, and Warren Beatty. It was just a very troubled production.
Yeah.
So it made only $14 million.
Oh my God.
And that's production. So one of the things that happened with it is when it was getting ready to release, people were like, maybe you should, just let it quietly go into the thing, whatever. But instead of that, they just spent a ton of money on advertising too. And some of it's like interesting. The test screenings were pretty favorable, and the reviews weren't bad, but like no one liked it. Like people didn't want to see it, and it just developed this reputation as like a terrible, terrible movie.
Yeah.
Let's see what else. So the other nominees that year for Razzie were Leonard Part 6, which won, Jaws: The Revenge.
Is that the sequel, or is it like...
That's the Michael Caine one.
No, but I mean, so there was Jaws, and was it the very next movie?
No, this was the fourth one.
Okay, fourth one.
There's Jaws, Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and then Jaws: The Revenge.
Gotcha.
Who's That Girl? Which was a Madonna vehicle. And then Tough Guys Don't Dance, which is based on a book by Norma Mailer and was directed by Norma Mailer and is apparently awful. Another vanity project, right? So, Ishtar tied for worst director with Norman Mailer.
Okay.
And then, it was also nominated for worst screenplay. I don't know if it won. And then also, interestingly enough, the Razzies that year, the worst original song winner was I Want Your Sex by George Michael, which was in Beverly Hills Cop 2. And I'm like, that's a good song.
Yeah, no kidding. I think everybody thinks of that as a good song.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe it was
junior high school John did. I was like, oh, it's so dirty. I want your sex. So, some other trivia. So it began principal photography in 1985, and there was a lot going on in the media at that time, like the hijacking of the Achille Laurel happened at the time, and people were really afraid that Dustin Hoffman was going to be kidnapped by terrorists as a Jewish actor, and some locations had to be checked for landmines before shooting could begin. There was a soundtrack that was recorded but never released.
Did it include the...
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And so it was interesting. So the reason this movie got made is like Warren Beatty felt he owed Elaine May like something for all the work she'd done in all his movies before. And he's like, I want to make a movie with you where you're given full control, where you can really show off, what you can do, because you've not had this chance to do this yet as of up until this point. She came up with this idea of this kind of like, remaking the Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, like Road to movies, where same plot, like American entertainers go off and get embroiled in foreign lands and stuff like that. And he's like, great idea. And he's like, we should do this with Dustin Hoffman. And Dustin Hoffman's like, yeah. And Warren Beatty's like, you should do this. She wrote Tootsie for you, and you owe her. And so he came on that way.
Gotcha.
Let's see.
I think...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And then again, Warren Beatty and Elaine May had a very contentious relationship in this movie. He didn't like what she was doing. She didn't like him as an actor. And Dustin Hoffman had to play middle child and mediate between them a lot.
No.
Let's see. Okay, so that's kind of my summary.
All right.
Fiber arts content. There is a scene in one of the markets where a little curtain comes across, and there are women who are knitting, and they're using DPNs.
Yes.
So we were excited about that. Best performance, worst performance?
Probably either the woman that was the spy, or the
leftist rebel.
The rebel,
Isabella
or
Gianni.
Charles Grodin.
Yeah, I would say I put Charles Grodin as the best. He's the CIA agent who's trying to make everything work and shenanigans. I thought he was really good. Worst performance, I would say Warren Beatty.
Oh God, absolutely.
I
didn't get the accent. He was supposed to be trying to do like a Texas Southern accent.
So it
was like every 15th word had a Southern sound to it.
And he's supposed to be this hapless guy who can't pick up women, and it's Warren Beatty playing against type. Whatever. I think you're supposed to be so charmed by the fact this is a big joke that Warren Beatty is bad with women, right?
Yeah.
And he's historically good with, he's got this reputation as this man. Ladies man. I thought Dustin Hoffman was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Dustin Hoffman in a bad movie. It wasn't Dustin Hoffman being bad in a movie.
I would agree with that. Personal history of the film. I had read a lot about Ishtar because it's one of those movies you always hear about in reading about movies. I had never seen it. How about you?
I had never seen it, and I thought it was and I'm sure the reason for this is because I'm mixing it up with another movie. I always thought it was a giant, epic, a la...
Lawrence of Arabia?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a movie that's also the name of a Middle Eastern city or country that is a giant epic?
Probably Casablanca.
No. Isn't there a movie where it's a word with an exclamation point? Well, anyway. I don't know. But I always thought it was a Middle Eastern giant epic.
Yeah.
And so...
It cost as much as a Middle Eastern.
Yeah. And so I didn't... So there was that, and then also... It was interesting because I had no concept for what it actually was. Mm-hmm. And when we've brought it up in conversation with like groups of friends or whatever, like people know this movie.
Yeah.
And like, oh God, that movie. Yeah. And like especially our older friends.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it was Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman.
Right.
I didn't know what it was about.
Well, it's a punchline movie. Like if you... Like, for a long time, it was a punchline movie. Like, you might make a joke about a movie, Ishtar, right?
Yeah. Like, that was as bad as Ishtar. That was worse than Ishtar.
That lost as much money as Ishtar, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And that's like kind of the other movies have come along that have kind of edged that out. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because...
That reference out.
I was reading a lot of articles about it, and I think there's been a reevaluation of it, kind of based on the fact that, you know, it was sort of considered as unfairly maligned. And a lot of the sort of reviews of it, so really famously, Gary Larson wrote a Far Side comic, and it was like, you know, the video store from hell, and Ishtar was one of the things on that. And then later he retracted. It's like, I saw it in the plane, it wasn't that bad.
It was bad.
It was bad. And, like, I think a lot of people, because Elaine May is such a big deal, and she's done such other good stuff, that people want it to be good, I think.
I will say, because we talk about this all the time.
Right.
This was not fun bad. This was boring bad.
Yeah.
So kind of like, what was the one we did last time? The Lonely Lady?
Yeah.
That was fun bad.
That was horrifying bad.
Yes, but it was still fun bad.
It was still fun bad, yeah.
But this was boring bad. I mean, the scenes that just, I think you said like the first 20 minutes of the movie where they're establishing that they're just bad songwriters.
Right.
We didn't need 15 scenes of them doing that.
No, we did not.
One.
Yeah, I don't think it was, I think they just assumed that people would just love watching these two characters. But, like, again, I think about, like, other movies like this, like, again, Spies Like Us, which is, I mean, 13-year-old me loved that movie.
Yeah.
And I think it might, if you watched it again, it might not hold up in some ways, but I think you'd still think it was a funny movie.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
And it wasn't a fun watch.
It wasn't a fun watch. I feel like you watch...
Because that's part of what we're trying to accomplish with this is...
Right. Although
I think you said it last time. It's famous flops is kind of what they
go for
in the Razzies. But go ahead, sorry.
But I feel like there were some, like... You could see some bits of, like, the whole stuff with the blind camel.
Yeah.
So, like, Isabella Adjani is trying to get Warren Beatty in touch with the people who can help him. She said, go to the market, find Muhammad, and buy a blind camel from him. And that's like the passcode. So he goes to
ask to buy a blind camel.
Yeah, ask to buy a blind camel. So Warren Beatty goes to the market, asks for Muhammad. There's like 27 Muhammads out there, and he actually buys a blind camel. And so for the rest of the movie, there's this joke where they're leading a blind camel around, which had some funny bits.
Yeah. But at that point, we had all turned against the movie.
Yes, absolutely.
So if we had liked the movie, liked the actors,
right,
or not like the actors, but
we're like swept up in the fun of it,
yeah,
and then we're having a good time watching it. Yeah. Like, and there's a couple other scenes with the CIA stuff. Is Charles Grodin stuff with the CIA is kind of funny.
Yeah, because he's like it's like just when you think that the situation can't get worse, and that these two bumbleheads can't, you know. It's like they mess up so bad that it confuses the experts.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So, like, I don't know. I think if it had... And, like, you know, doofuses... I think it's a genre, you know, like, Villain Has Excellent Adventures, like, you know...
Yeah.
Like, these idea of these two, you know, dim-witted Americans stumbling into things beyond their ken, and then, you know, shenanigans ensue, and everything turns out for the best. Like, that's a pretty... winning formula.
Yeah.
They don't have to be Americans, but you know what I mean.
But they often are.
They often are. I mean, they're American.
In real life, too.
So, yeah, I think. But I've seen like a lot of people say like, "Oh God, I watched Ishtar and it was actually really good." And I think you're trying too hard when you say that.
Well,
I mean,
there's no accounting for taste.
That is true, but they're wrong.
And everybody in our comments just exploded.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna. Maybe we'll have. If people want to defend Ishtar to me in the comments, I will engage.
That would be fun to read those.
Yeah,
comments.
I'm just
or people that didn't like the Last Emperor. It'd be interesting to hear people's comments on that.
Yeah, quite possibly. Did it deserve the award it receives? Well, it didn't deserve. It didn't receive the award.
Yeah.
Does it deserve its reputation? I think it deserves its reputation as a movie that's not good, that cost a lot of money.
A famous flop.
That is...
Well, that's kind of like I'm sorry, finishing your thought.
But like where you have, on paper, this movie should... And like you can see the pitch of it, like Warren Beatty, Dustin Hoffman, Elaine May doing this comedy about like... You're like, that on paper sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And should be hilarious. And you understand why people were like, this is going to be the biggest hit of 1986,
right.
Even though it was in 87.
Right.
But, like, because it costs so much... Like, I think if they made it for $15 million and done it all on the backlot in Hollywood, it would have been released and people were like, oh, it's kind of a fun movie.
Yeah.
But because it was so famously expensive and such a vanity project and all the shenanigans behind the scenes.
Yeah. So you were saying something along the lines of... it's a famous flop, and there are people that have said that they liked it.
Yeah.
That's like the movie that's now often mentioned as the most expensive flop is the movie about... It's like he's like a superhero or...
John Carter of Mars.
John Carter of Mars. I actually liked that movie.
Yeah.
But that's probably an example of... Sorry, I'm trying to connect that back to the point you were making.
Well, I think that like there are movies that have really bad John Carter of Mars is one of them. Like it was released and it didn't find an audience. It was really expensive, and so
it was like it lost more money than any movie had ever made.
Yeah, and so it's really fun to, as a cult, we like to pile on those movies, and then you watch it again. We watched it and. I liked it.
I liked it.
It was a perfectly fine movie, and it was entertaining to watch.
Yeah, but this was not.
Yeah, this was not fun to watch. And like again, it's like I think we said a lot of these things like if you went in anyway, it's not okay. Ishtar, thumbs down.
Who would have known?
Yeah, you never know. So one fun fact that I forgot. Is that last week we watched Terms of Endearment, and that starred Shirley MacLaine, and Shirley MacLaine and Warren Beatty are brother and sister, so that's kind of fun.
That's right. Don't look over here.
Okay.
You're cheating. Okay, I have a year, but I don't know... Do we pick the year of the awards? We do pick the year of the awards.
Year of the awards.
Okay, all right.
Or, no, do we...
Yeah, we do, because this was considered 1988.
Okay. So we do the award year and the movies released in. Yeah, that makes sense. Because the first Golden Razzies were 81, about 80 films. And then right now we would do up to 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so... Okay, yay. This is one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
Okay, 1985.
Okay.
The awards of 1985, so 1984 was when it was released.
Amadeus?
Yes.
Okay.
I love Amadeus.
Yeah, good movie.
And then...
I saw it in the theaters.
I did not.
Okay.
Okay, alright, sorry. Okay. Worst Picture, 1985. Which is going to be weird because it's Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Okay.
So are we going to have to watch Part 1?
I've watched both. I've watched Rambo.
I think I have too.
I watched the first one. What are the other movies that year?
Fever Pitch.
Okay.
Revolution.
Okay.
Rocky 4.
Oh, fuck, I love Rocky 4.
and Year of the Dragon.
We should just watch Rocky 4. Such a good movie.
That's the one with the Russian guy in it, right?
Yeah.
We could, and then we could, because I know some of our friends want us to watch that. Watch that with us.
We should watch. We should do a Rocky. We should watch all the Rockies up to 4.
Okay.
I don't count 5 or whatever. We should have a Rocky because they're fun movies.
Oh, so it's a sequel to the first Rambo movie.
Yes.
It's not. It's not. Like, when it says First Blood Part 2, I think of that as the second part of a 2-part movie.
Yeah.
But it's not. It says it's a
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone, who also reprises his role as Vietnam War veteran John Rambo, a sequel to the First Blood Part 2. Or a sequel to First Blood.
Yeah.
Second installment of the Rambo franchise, followed by Rambo 3.
Right.
Yeah. And it was screenplay by James Cameron.
Fantastic.
And Sylvester Stallone.
Fantastic.
All right, so we were watching Amadeus and Rambo First Blood Part 2.
I wonder what those movies have in common.
I can't think of anything. All right, so thank you, everybody. I've been trying to be good about responding to comments, and so I did that, I think, pretty well between the last episode and now. So we'd love to hear your feedback in the comments, and we hope to see you in a couple weeks. Or actually, next 2 weeks from now we'll be in Mexico.
3 weeks
so maybe
from now.
3 weeks from now.
Okay, bye. Bye-bye.